Now, if you're struggling with self sabotage and you don't know where to start, here, right here on this podcast, we're building the community. I want to remind you, breaking self sabotage patterns takes time. You've been operating like this for years, every decade, like I was. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate the small wins. We're building a community of people committed to breaking these cycles. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, everybody. This is Terror to Triumph. My name is Alfonso Pelt, and I'm here with Storm again. We welcome you to episode 6, Steps to Rebuilding Trust, Practical Practices. This is our third segment in a 4-segment mini series on trust. Um, Storm, I'm thankful and grateful for you being here tonight. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fine and I'm grateful to be back. Yes.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. For those of you new who are joining us, Terror to Triumph is a podcast about community of survivors. Survivors of what, you may ask? I'm glad you did. Survivors of childhood abuse. Those of us who have suffered childhood abuse and are trying to recover from it, don't know how to recover, don't know where to begin to recover. We are building that community to give a way for people to see what it takes and learn the ways we have built ourselves up after the trauma we have suffered. Learning that we have created these survival tactics that are really not conducive to our adult lives. So we are trying to learn how to cope with adult living, relationships, how to deal with coworkers and broken trust, and a whole myriad of other things. This is a safe place for anyone to come and to get knowledge and to open up, to hear stories about other survivors and how they overcame and the struggles that we go through, to know that you are not alone in this battle. There are others here who are with you, who are struggling with you, who want to win, and you deserve a life without fear, without feeling guilt for what happened. It's not your fault. And we are here to bring to you information on surviving, not just surviving, but thriving, how to claim your life back, to be the person God always deemed you to be. So, tonight, again, we are going to talk about trust in the third segment of the series of trust. In episode 4, we talked about rebuilding trust with yourself. In episode 5, we looked at how trust falters and how to recognize the cracks. Things like inconsistency, broken promises, gaslighting, dismissal of your feelings, and boundary violations. Tonight, we're taking the next step. How do you actually rebuild trust once it's been broken? We're going to talk about when it's worth rebuilding, what that process looks like in real life, and practical steps you could take, whether you're the one who was hurt or the one who did the hurting. before we talk about how to rebuild trust, we need to talk about when it even makes sense to try. Not every relationship deserves a rebuild. Sometimes the healthiest and bravest thing you could do is walk away. Trust may be worth rebuilding when the harm was real, but not ongoing abuse. Like a person may have hurt you one time and they genuinely feel remorse and regret, and they do things to avoid having that happen again. Another thing is the other person acknowledges what they did without excuses. When a person says, "Oh man, I messed up. I'm so sorry." But they don't say, "But why did you do this? That caused me to do," or "This was your fault in the beginning," or "It's not that serious." Okay? Those are things of deflection and excuses. If a person does those things, might have some problems. But if they show genuine remorse and take responsibility for the hurt they caused, it might be worth rebuilding. If they're willing to do the consistent work over time and not just say sorry once. Trust is usually not worth rebuilding when there's ongoing abuse, emotional, physical, sexual, financial, whatever the case it may be. When boundaries are repeatedly violated after being clearly stated, or when they blame you for their behavior, or they gaslight you, you feel less and less safe over time. I said this before in I think it might have been episode 3 or 4, the beginning of 4, where I said in my marriage, my wife would tell me, "You keep doing these things." I didn't know I was doing these things like intentionally. I wasn't, but I always seem to come back full circle, and we end up in another argument. I've done the same thing. May not be the exact same thing, but the same thing and the same pretenses in a different way. My wife was trying to explain to me how it was affecting her, how she felt. She made it clear. But in my head, I was deflecting. I was the one causing the hurt and not knowing, because I felt uncomfortable, like this situation is too good to be true. And I reverted to some kind of trauma in my head from my own psychological and sexual abuse as a child. Having these things happen to me, I'm thinking like I have to cause some kind of rift in our relationship, in our marriage, because the feeling of security comes from the trauma that I used to live in. I feel like if there's no trauma, there's no sense of security. There's no one who really doesn't love me. And that is skewed. And of course, that's a result of our minds as children trying to go into survival mode into adulthood. Um, we create these things in our minds to normalize what we've been going through, our trauma. So rebuilding trust is not an obligation. You don't owe it to somebody to start rebuilding the trust that they've broken. It's a choice, and your safety and emotional and physical being should always come first. In any trust rupture, there are usually two roles. You have the person who was hurt and the person who did the hurting. Sometimes we've been in both roles in different relationships. For the person who was hurt, the victim, as you will, you are allowed to feel angry, to feel sad, to be confused. You are allowed to ask questions, to set boundaries. You are allowed to take time. You are not responsible for, as the victim, you are not responsible for fixing the other person, moving faster than when you're ready, and pretending it didn't hurt. You're not responsible to do any of those. You heard the colloquialism said that you can't teach a old dog new tricks. Where
Yes.
the error in that statement, excuse me, the error in that statement, Storm, comes from the fact that we're taking it upon ourselves to try to change somebody. But that's not our position in the first place. We shouldn't be trying to change anybody in a relationship or not. It's not our job. It's not our responsibility. And that's not the stance that we should take. For the person who did the hurting, the perpetrator, as you will, it is your job to acknowledge the harm clearly. Like, I did this and it hurt you. You know, take responsibility without blaming, without minimizing, or without flipping it. They're trying to reverse it and put it on the person you've harmed. You have to own it. And then be patient with the other person's timeline. You can't rush somebody's forgiveness. You can't say, I said I'm sorry, dang, what you gonna do? And I've heard people say that to people before. You cannot. It every person is different and the way they cope with hurt is different. You have to be patient and allow them time to process the hurt and process whether they choose to forgive you or not. You're the one that caused the harm. You're not the victim. They are. You caused that. So learn to be gracious enough and accept the fact that you caused the harm and that that person deserves the time to say whether they want to continue in this relationship or not, whether they want to set a boundary because of this situation or not. It's not your call anymore. You have to give that person the right to choose what they're going to do at this point. Trust isn't rebuilt by just saying, trust me. I'm a change. Trust me. I'm sorry. Trust me. It's going to be different. Trust me. It's rebuilt by living in a way that's trustworthy. That means taking the time, doing things consistently, and building up that trust. You always hear trust is earned, not given. That's true. It's earned. And it's earned by consistency. Storm, what do you think? What's important from the side of the person that's been hurt?
Um, it's for that person to, when you're hurt, I feel like that person's supposed to be apologetic, not like you said, not make excuses, just be apologetic, say why, and we can move on. But when you keep making excuses, I did it because you did this, or I did it because you did that, then we can't get nowhere. So I feel that the
Mm,
person has to be, in order for the trust to be there, then that person needs to apologize with no excuses, but show you consistently that they can be trusted. Yes.
true, true. Hey, have you ever experienced or seen someone actually show change over time after they've done something wrong?
Yes, it's an associate. I have seen them with, it was a lot that went on in their relationship, but through time and trust with each other and them going to seek, they went to counseling, and after going to counseling, they actually got through it, and they're actually still together. They're making it through, and they're happy because they seek the help that they needed. They got the counseling, and they got someone else involved to help them through it.
You see, that's the thing too. If uh if you're in a relationship, and I'm gonna use my example I put out there earlier. If you're in a relationship or a marriage, and you notice that you keep doing things, the same things, maybe not exactly the same way, but you keep doing things and your partner keeps telling you something's wrong, they can't be lying all the time. I mean, at some point, just like I did, you have to say, something's wrong with me. And I don't know what it is. I got to figure it out. I don't want to keep hurting you, but I don't know why I do these things. So I have to seek professional help. And sometimes professional help may be the only thing that you really need. Sometimes you need somebody outside the box, outside of the relationship, to tell you, hey, you suffered this, and now you're reacting to it, but these are the reasons why you're acting this way. If you don't know, you're never going to figure it out on your own. You're just going to ask questions and try to understand something you really can't figure out. It's like you're going to be spinning your wheels. A car stuck in the mud spinning its wheels is useless. It's nothing but frustrating to those around it. So that's exactly going to be you.
Mm.
You have to find some professional counselor, therapist, professional. You have to seek professional help. Again, I tell people all the time, this podcast is not meant to be a replacement for these things. This is just a doorway. I want people to have a doorway to start the conversation, because I didn't have that when I was going through. When I wish to God there had been things like podcasts or groups like that, but they didn't have these things back in my day. When I was coming up, there was no uh, 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 child abuse group or hotline, or they had AA, NA. I think they had just started years later after AA, but there was nothing like that for us back then. Now we have these things. And I built this platform specifically to help those of us who are still in that veil of fear, who don't want to speak out, or who may have tried to speak out once or twice, but they spoke to the wrong people. And because of that fear, they stuffed it all back down and went back into that veil of guilt and remorse, and they don't want to come out. This podcast is meant for that reason, for you to actually have an opportunity to say, I want to be free of this. I want a life. I want to live. And you can't live in fear all of your life. I mean, you could try to stuff it down and say it doesn't and say it doesn't exist, but it's there, and it's going to creep up on you, and it's going to come out in various ways, and those ways can hurt you, hurt others. So I plead to everybody, if you are in need of assistance right now, look at the bottom of your screen. There will be numbers down there you can call for various reasons, to seek the help that you need right now. Don't wait for a friend or somebody else to say, well, do you need help? Because that might never come. People don't see the signs that we see, that we presume to have, that we do exude. They don't see these things. So if you know you need help right now, please check the bottom of the screen on ticker tape and just wait for the numbers to come around, jot them down, and call them. There are people ready to help you right now, 24/7. These are national numbers, by the way, not local. So it can apply to anybody that needs help at the moment. Okay, continuing on. Um, we're going to go by a step-by-step rebuild process. Step one is naming exactly who broke the trust, or what broke the trust, rather. Not you're a bad person. I mean, okay, take me and Storm, for example. Say me and Storm was in a relationship. I did something wrong. Instead of naming what broke the trust, she says I'm a bad person. That's not the right way to rebuild the trust. Step one is naming what I did that broke the trust. You have to be specific. You have to be clear, and you have to be clear of the impact that it caused. When you did XYZ, it broke my trust because of ABC. This gives both people, the person who hurt and the person who was hurt, a shared understanding of what actually happened. The person who hurt has to listen without interrupting. I know that may be a hard one for some of us because no one wants to be the bad person. No one wants to admit that they are the wrong party in something that has gone wrong. But in order to heal, we have to own up. We have to take accountability. So we have to stop and listen to our significant other without interrupting them, without trying to plead or justify our side. We have to listen, actively listen. That just doesn't mean sit there and let them drone on without paying attention to what they're actually saying. That means actively listening, hearing what they say without interrupting them, and taking accountability for what we've done. Okay? Because they reflect back what they heard. They say, I hear that when I did ABC, you felt XYZ, and it made you feel unsafe. No buts, no defending, no saying you're too sensitive. Validation doesn't mean you agree with every detail. It means you honor the other person's experience as it being real. You don't act like it doesn't exist. You don't act like they're faking it. You don't act like you minimize it. You take it as something as real as a person standing in front of you. Because that's what's happening. You're hurting the person who's standing in front of you. Now, the person who did the hurting has to own their behavior. They have to acknowledge the impact of what they've done. And inside, in their heart, they have to express genuine remorse, not fake that. Because if you don't really care about the person you hurt, you might as well get out that relationship right now. Because you're not going to do anything but continue to hurt that person. If you don't care about how they're feeling and they're expressing the fact that you've hurt them in a grievous way, it could be emotionally, it could be physically, it could be sexually, it could be mentally. whichever way you've hurt them. If you don't acknowledge that and accept it and truly feel sorry for that, you need to walk away. The person who hurt the other person, I'm talking to you, you need to walk away. You have to avoid saying, I'm sorry you feel that way. I've heard a lot of people say that when they get into an argument. I'm sorry if you feel that I've hurt you. You sorry that I, I, I feel hurt because you hurt me? How does that make sense? You're sorry because I feel hurt that you hurt me. Make it make sense. No, you're not sorry. You're only sorry because I'm expressing myself to you that you hurt me. And to try to belittle the situation, you don't even acknowledge the hurt that you've caused. You're only acknowledging the fact that I'm expressing myself and you don't want to acknowledge it at all. Deflecting or transferring. Well, if you hadn't done this, then I wouldn't have. You can't deflect or transfer. You have to own it, take ownership. And deflecting only means you're not really trying to own it at all. You're putting blame on somebody else, and that is not theirs to take. The healthy thing to say is, I chose to do A, B, C, and that hurt you in XYZ way. I'm sorry. And I take full responsibility for that. That is a healthy thing to say because you've acknowledged that what you did caused hurt to the situation. And you can't keep not owning the pain that you caused somebody. You can't keep deflecting because you don't want to be the bad guy when you are. You have to accept the fact people mess up all the time. Doesn't make it right, but owning up to it is the right thing to do.
Yes.
That's how you heal. That's how you, if especially in relationships, if you don't own up to it, there's never any healing. Hello, America. I hope you're listening to this. If you don't end up owning up to the wrongs that you've done, admitting them, and seeing how they hurt other people, and taking responsibility, and continuing forward, doing actions that actually build the trust between you and the other person. I hope y'all reading between the lines of what I'm saying.
Yes.
Because without that, there is no healing. Okay. I'm getting off my political soapbox. We're getting back to it. Excuse me. So together, the hurt person and the person who did the hurting, we define what needs to change, what boundaries are now in place, what's non-negotiable going forward. For an example, Storm could tell me, if you raise your voice, I will end this conversation. That means I got a choice. I could continue raising my voice and Storm could walk out the door. That'd be not just the end of the conversation, but that might be the end of the relationship because I broke the boundary. Same way works the other way. What if I told Storm something personal And I have to, and she shared my personal stuff. And I say, if you share my private information again, I will step back from this relationship. These are creating boundaries, healthy boundaries. And we have to have these sometimes, especially after hurt has become present in the relationship. We have to let each other know, hey, this cannot go on. I will not allow you to continue to hurt me. If you want this to work, this is the line right here. You can't cross it. So we have to let our significant other, we have to sit down and have this conversation, and we have to talk to them and let them know what this boundary is. And then because I'm sorry, not time, but trust is rebuilt over time. It's not done in one conversation. So once you establish these boundaries, you have to look for, I'm talking to the people who are the hurt, who have been hurt. You have to look for consistent behavior, the respect for your boundaries, and the follow through on commitments. So, let's say I establish a boundary. I have to watch Storm and see if she's going to be consistent in not breaking those boundaries. Not only not breaking those boundaries, but she won't tiptoe around or close to them. She's not going to play with that. So she's respecting the boundaries as well as avoiding any conflict concerning the boundary. And the follow through on the commitments, I'm not going to do that. That shows me from the consistent behavior that she's following through on the commitment. She's respecting the boundaries and she's honoring that. Okay, you can adjust your level of closeness as you observe. As the significant other starts to do the consistent behavior, respects the boundaries, and follow through on the commitments, you can become closer to them. It's okay to adjust. Remember, rebuilding is a slow walk. It's not a sprint. You can't rebuild trust in the night. That's not the way it works. People can say, okay, you could trust me now. No, mama didn't raise no food. I'm not boo boo the food. Sorry. Slow and steady wins the race when it comes to rebuilding trust. Hey, Storm, what step do you think people rush past the most?
Um, that it's the step from the beginning. Like you could trust me, and they feel like if they do one right thing, that everything should be over. So they don't feel like that it should be consistently, and everything need to be consistently for it to be right.
Hmm. True that. True that. How many times have we either heard somebody say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna do that again," and I'm gonna try to do better, and they might do better for a little bit, but then they go right back to doing it. I ain't gonna lie. I was a guilty party to that on the uh, not the victim side, but the other side. I was the accoster of the hurt. So I've been on that side, and I'd say, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna do this again, and it might go on good for a minute, but then something happens, and I end up doing the same stuff again. That goes back to what we talked about earlier, was self sabotage. But I didn't know I was doing that back then. But I,
Yes.
what I did realize is that it was a repeating pattern. I didn't know how to stop it though. So, have you ever tried to rebuild trust too fast, Storm?
Uh, I never rebuilt trust because I never gave no one a chance. I just, I didn't want to rebuild. I just wanted to walk away, you know,
Mm, I
and
understand that.
that was my guilt, you know. I just wanted to close the door and walk off. because it was one pattern that was like, I promise I won't do this again. I promise I won't call you out your name. I promise if you just give me one more chance. And then it was like, no, I don't want to give you another chance. But the person showed me that I shouldn't have gave him another chance because it was like bleep, 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 so you get it. And I had to hang up the phone, after that because you say that you want to call me out my name, but you just kind of like call me five B's and hung up the phone.
Mm, mm. See that is the boundary. You set the boundary, but immediately they did not respect the boundary. So you did the right thing. You walked away. You gave them a chance so you can observe to see where they were going, and they didn't respect your boundary or you, and because of that, they lost a good woman, a relationship, and they probably are kicking themselves in the butt right now, talking about some. I was a butthole back then. I wish I didn't mess over her like that. I find myself saying that. That dang, she was a good woman. I treated her
Hmm.
so bad. You know, but these are the things we kick ourselves in the butt for. We wish we hadn't have done these things, uh, and we regret them later on. But these are steps to learning how to fix these things. So even while you're trying to build, I'm sorry, even though you're trying to rebuild trust with someone else, you still have to keep rebuilding trust with yourself. So this is like you're on two different fronts trying to rebuild trust, one with yourself and one with your significant other. The key points are to keep checking in with your body. If you watch episode 5, we talked about some of these things. Episode 4, we talked about some of these things. Keep checking in with your body. Do you feel safer over time, or do you feel more anxious? You have to keep journaling, writing down, what did I notice this week? How I felt around this person or that person. You know, don't override your own red flags just because you want it to work. Maybe I should repeat that one more time. Don't override your own red flags simply because you want the relationship to work. You are allowed to change your mind because you can start rebuilding and later decide, I don't think this is right for me. But when you have or see red flags and you are even looking back in your journals and you see the red flags that you've written, those things mean something. And those are not points to ignore. So you can't just blow by this stuff. That's a moment to take a pause and really think about what's going on, why your body is feeling this way around this person, or when they did what they did, or if you're feeling more safe or more anxious. That could be telling you you need to get out. You need to leave that situation alone. It's toxic for you.
Yes.
So here's a good question. How do you stay honest with yourself in the middle of trying to give someone another chance? You got any idea for that, Storm?
Print a prayer
Yeah, I
and,
know that's right.
prayer, you know, no, on a serious note, prayer and, a good therapy. You have to seek therapy. You have
Mm,
to reach out and seek therapy because that's the only way you're gonna stay honest in the middle of chaos. Because if you don't seek therapy and you don't reach out to if you don't see therapy and you don't reach out to, pray or whatever, you're gonna wind up doing the same thing that that person's doing, and y'all gonna both be dishonest to each other.
You know what? That's one thing about a therapist. They keep it real. They call you on your BS, and they know you. Well, once they learn you, they know your ins and outs. They know when you trying to BS them or not, or when you trying to be real or not. So when you try to fake honesty with yourself in the middle of trying to give person another chance, they're gonna let you know. They're gonna let you know. They're gonna be like, you wouldn't have went for this for anybody else, but now you going for this person. What's going on? They're gonna call you on it. Why are you giving this person another chance, and you're not even trying to stay honest about it? So yeah, true. Another way I would think trying to stay honest with yourself is well, honesty is like accountability for yourself. And how do you stay accountable to yourself? That's that journaling. When you journal, you have to look back, and your journal is really telling you how to be honest with yourself, because your journal is about the actual things that's happening. Your journal is about how your body feels, and if you're feeling anxious or if you're feeling safer in certain environments with certain people, then you have to look back at that journal and be like, well, I have to check myself, because I said this, and if I'm going to build trust with myself, I have to be real with my journal and reflect on what that means with this significant other, giving them another chance. So you have to, like, balance both books, so to speak, to use an accounting term. You balance in one book with yourself, and you balance in another book with another person, but that person broke the trust in the first place, and you're trying to rebuild the trust with yourself. So you're coming at it from different angles. So that can be confusing, and it helps to have a therapist put you on a level playing field with your emotions, so you can focus on what's important at the moment, focus on going forward with the right mindset, instead of letting yourself get sidetracked by uh, negative things in a relationship. Okay. Excuse me. I'm gonna give you some more scenarios. Okay. Say a friend shares something with you in confidence. How would you walk through steps 1 through 5? That is something we have to really think about. Okay, because step one, let's go back over them. Step one, you name what broke the trust. I told you something in confidence. And when you shared what I told to the work group, it broke my trust with you. And it made me feel that I can't trust you with anything else ever again. So when you are clear and specific, remember, you have to tell them exactly what happened, and you have to tell them exactly how it impacted you. That's step one. Remember, step two, the person who you're talking to, the person who hurt you, has to listen without interrupting. They're supposed to reflect back, like, I hear you said that when I betrayed your trust because I told something that was confidential and I shouldn't have did that. And that it made you feel like you couldn't trust me with anything anymore. And it made you feel unsafe, they when they acknowledge it, you know you can move forward. No buts, no defending, remember? No deflecting. So the step three to that would be the person who did the hurt, they have to own that behavior. They acknowledge the impact and then they express genuine remorse. Not saying, remember, I'm sorry you feel that I hurt you. Or I'm sorry you feel that way. Or if you hadn't done this, then I wouldn't have. But if they do say, you know, I chose to tell your stuff because I thought I'd get a good laugh out of my coworkers, and I see that it hurt you in such a serious way. I'm sorry. And I take full responsibility for that. And that's the healthy thing to say. But even though saying the words doesn't mean much unless you see consistency behind the words. When you draw the boundary, which is the next step, you say, hey, you cannot share any more of anything personal that I share with you to anybody else. Now you got a boundary. Okay, we got the boundary. And so now the boundary is in place. What's non-negotiable going forward? Okay, if you share anything I tell you to anybody else, we're done. That's it. There's no more coming back from this. I cannot trust you after you betrayed me twice. You know, you get me once, shame on you. You get me twice, shame on me, because I allowed you to do it. So if I'm going to give you another chance, you cannot do this ever again. Okay, then in step five, you have to be observant, watch. Are they exuding consistent behavior? Are they respecting that boundary that you set? Are they going out? Are they talking about your stuff still? Or are they really trying to follow through? Are they going around telling people, I told you this because I thought it would make a laugh, but I hurt my significant other when I said that? I'm not going to share any of her stuff no more. I'm not going to share any of his stuff anymore. I'm sorry. I should never have brought that to y'all in the first place. I was wrong. I mean, even going around to tell people, hey, I'm closing this door. I respect my significant other to acknowledge I've hurt her. And I'm even going outside the box to make sure it's not going to happen again. Don't ask me. Don't even go there. We going to keep this between us from now on. Okay. So after you've done the 5 steps, even while you're rebuilding trust with yourself, and you've gone through a few examples trying to get this into your head, you could say, okay, a parent or a sibling dismisses your feelings. How would you set boundaries and decide how close you want to be? Mm, that's a personal one for me. That is a personal one for me. Um, I've tried to tell family members about my situation. One family member in particular, I'm not going to say their name, but one family member in particular witnessed the act of my sexual abuse and denies it to this day. And I couldn't even come to a point to set a boundary because even in our adulthood, when I brought it up to them, they did not remember. Now, it could have been a suppressed memory. They chose not to remember, or they just didn't want to acknowledge the situation. You know, whatever the case may be, it would have helped if that sibling had said, "Yes, I saw that, and I feared too." That's why I didn't say anything. I would have understood that, but because there was no acknowledgement of what happened, and even in our adult lives, there still is no acknowledgement. It pushes me away from them, and it pushes me away from them because if you saw it and you can't acknowledge what happened, how can I trust you? I mean, that's a bitter pill to swallow. I mean, I love them to death, but that's the truth. How can I trust you? I want to trust you. I love you, but you won't acknowledge my pain. You force me to acknowledge your pain, but you won't acknowledge mine. How is that fair? And then the boundary of trying to be close to somebody who doesn't acknowledge or want to acknowledge something that important to you, it erodes. There's no boundary because now there's no connection, period. So it's everything is at a 10-foot pole reach,
Mm.
you know? It's like barely a relationship, even though it's faintly there. It's tentative at best because when people don't really acknowledge another person's feelings, hurt, emotions, acknowledge their pain, what should have been a boundary, when they don't acknowledge these things, it's like a slap in the face. It's like what matters to me matters. What matters to you, not as much. So when that happens, things become toxic real quick. So yeah, not being around and all that stuff causes whole other issues. But the boundary was already crossed by not acknowledging. So what happened? There's a distance, and that distance is comfortable for me. I hate that there's distance, but as long as there's no acknowledgement, I can't personally invest to be close, that close. And that's healthy to my psyche. And I hope that they will understand that. Just like I hope that they will understand that I respect them and their boundaries and their hurt and their pain. Because I do. But there has to be a two-way street on that. Okay, we're gonna move on. I don't want to get too much involved in personal effects. Even though that is one of the reasons why the show is created, to open up a window into my life to share with you. I'm the one saying that I'm going to be 100% transparent with you. Um, Soon, I hope we can get to a point where we can do a Q&A where people can watch the show, ask questions, uh, and I'll be 100% forthcoming in whatever questions that you ask. But until we get to that point, we will keep disseminating information to you as we get it. So, tonight, we talked about real practical steps to rebuilding trust. Okay? When it's worth rebuilding, the roles of the hurt person and the person who hurt, a 5 step process to walk through, and how to keep trusting yourself in the middle of it. I'm going to give you guys some homework. Oh, I'm going to give you guys some homework for this week. I want you guys to identify one relationship where trust has been strained. Ask yourself honestly, is this relationship safe enough to even attempt rebuilding? If yes, write down this. What broke the trust? Write down what you would need to feel safer. If no, write down what boundary do I need to put in place to protect myself. If you feel safe, we implore you to share your reflections with us. Your story might help someone else. You can reach us on Terror to Triumph on buzzsprout.com or wherever you listen to this podcast on. Next week, we're going to be moving into the final part of the mini series, which is episode 7, Sustaining Trust, Long-Term Healing. Everybody take a deep breath. Yep, yep. That's what we're talking about. Healing, where you can feel like I could take a break now. Finally, I'm there. You know, we want to get to that point, and that's the long-term healing I'm talking about. We're going to talk about how to maintain trust once it's rebuilt, how to protect yourself without shutting down, what healthy long-term trust actually looks like for us survivors. Storm, you got any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
Yeah, better complete your homework for next week. But I'm on TikTok. I'm on TikTok live and I'll be on TikTok live, every day. And my name is Diamanda on TikTok. So y'all come check me out. And I just discuss just simple things, just come into my live and just like share, repost, tap the screen. And I talked about history, just different items, poetry, soft jazz, soft R&B. So come check me out in TikTok. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Storm. We appreciate you. Um, I just want you to remember you are not obligated to rebuild trust with everyone, but you are worthy of relationships where trust is real, consistent, and safe. I'm Afonso Pelt. This has been Storm. This is Terror to Triumph, and we'll see you next time. Have a good
See you next
evening.
week.